Next on the agenda is budget amendment for community development block grant, 109 East Main Street.
So just to be kind of quick here, as Jeremy was saying, the 50% match that the property owners will have to give will require the town to accept the funds and then raise our expenditures by that amount so we can pay the contractors for the work. The first budget amendment that's coming through is for Mr. Greco for $2,823.09. That is his matching funds. So we're just requesting that.
Okay. Can that be put on the consent agenda, or does that have to go through?
Yeah, it'll be on the consent agenda.
Do we have a projected dollar amount that we could just approve X amount of dollars, or do it case by case?
It's been estimated, so it's going to be a case-by-case thing. So as we approve the bids, we'll put on the consent agenda for the budget amendments as well.
I don't see any reason to have it come for work session. Just put it straight on the consent agenda.
Okay, for a future project?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. There'll be two items, actually. We'll do a budget amendment, and then we will do the actual
Yep, the contract.
contract with.
Y'all agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have a question, Gene? Okay, thank you. Next, discussion pertaining to the draft South Street study.
I thought it was.
I like
Yes. I hope we don't go through all this whole package.
I hope not.
If we need to go out some week. Where is it?
I'm from. Make it as condensed as possible, and in fact, I have, the original report is 74 pages, but a lot of it was just traffic study data. So that if anyone would like something that's a lot easier to carry, is just the text of the report with the figures and all the data taken out of it. If it's okay with you all, I'm just going to stand up here because there's a lot of things that I want to point out.
Speak up, Robert.
The reason that we're reviewing this study is because one of the goals the council set was improving pedestrian safety on South Street. And so in 2015, the town had gone to DOT and asked for a study, a road diet on South Street. And so we just want to kind of revisit that. And I'll give just a real quick overview of the study so that we can see what's the best way to go with this. Okay, so here's the study area, obviously Royal Avenue to Commerce. And these are the pedestrian counts. They're 4 years old now, but they're probably pretty much the same. You can see that the highest counts are at our existing crosswalks. And Hill Street is the highest, followed by the Royal Plaza crosswalks. This is the existing or 2015 level of service. I just wanted to go over level of service. At an intersection, level of service is determined by the wait time, and it's rated from A to F. A being the best, F being not so good. And so A through D is considered by VDOT to be acceptable, and then E and F are not acceptable. So, and also in these, in the square here is, there's two letters, it's AM and PM peak levels. So this intersection overall is fine, it's A and A. But then you can see it breaks down further once you get into all of the turning data. So this intersection overall is fine, but here we've got an F for left turns. So it's important to look at all of the turn data rather than just the intersection as a whole.
Okay.
But I want to focus more on the future projection. They went with 2040 as the projected year, and because that's what the alternatives are based on, is the 2040 traffic. So they came up with 2040 by, since this is already built out for growth, what they went by was historical data. They went with old traffic counts, compared it to new, what is the growth rate over time, and came out with approximately 1% per year. So going 15 years ahead, and then adding 1% each year, comes up with the 2040 level. And this is with, excuse me, this is with nothing changed. So then we see our level of service for all of the intersections. Not too bad, pretty much the same. But I did want to point out over here at Royal, we've got several Ds showing up. D is still considered acceptable, but with this key intersection, these peak rates are just average peak rates. So what you would see on an average day in the morning to PM peak time, not during peak leaf time. So for this intersection especially, and for Commerce, we want to probably stay at C or better at all times. So we've got some Ds, then we've got some Fs showing up down here at Commerce. Just a quick point out, we've got these here for left turn out of Royal Plaza at the Martin's Light. I circled that because under existing, with no improvements, at the current time, 2015 levels, it's listed as an F. I think that's a problem with their data, or maybe even a typo. If there's a problem with existing levels, I'm sure at 2040 levels with nothing changing, that would also be a problem there. So that's why that one's circled. So these are the alternatives. So the original alternative, the purpose for the study was a road diet. So a road diet is basically taking a 4-lane road and narrowing it down to 2 or 3 lanes. There's either one lane in either direction and a turn lane, or a median in the middle. So I just want to make sure I hit all the key points here. Something that shows up in both alternatives is Carter Street. VDOT is recommending extending Carter Street over to Acton to give full access, because in both alternatives, Carter Street gets changed to one-way to prevent the people from short-circuiting this intersection and turning right here to get out to South Street.
I see a lot of that.
Yeah. And so in order to make this one-way, but also still give the residents back here full access, the suggestion was to extend Carter to Acton. But again, we could just change that to one-way. Then, of course, the medians where possible, and basically narrow things down. There's bike lanes in either direction. Just other changes that you would expect, like optimizing the timing of the signals, changing the crosswalk side where there's a median to where there is a median, and that gives the pedestrian a refuge island in the middle of the street. And so those are the major points for option 1. Here's a rendering of it. You can see that there's one lane in either way, bike lanes on both sides, wider medians where we can fit it, otherwise narrower median. So we look at level of service for that. Again, there's not a big change. Some levels go down, some go up. VDOT's concerns seem to be with these side streets. The level of service went down. There wasn't a big change, maybe a change from an A to a B or a B to a C. But the thought was that the level of service was going down because the traffic was getting more dense because you're narrowing down from 2 lanes either direction to 1. And so that traffic stream gets more solid. It's harder to get out of the side streets because there's not as many openings in the traffic, which again is a concern, especially when we get into the heavy traffic times in the fall. So VDOT came up with alternative number 2, which was access management. This is a little more involved. The key points here are that all 4 lanes remain, but most of the side streets become right in, right out. Acton is still a full service intersection. Blue Ridge becomes signalized. That's the other key thing, is moving the signal from Royal Plaza and instead of being lined up with the Royal Plaza entrance here in front of Martin's and the McDonald's, the signal moves to line up with basically the back entrance of Martin's and Blue Ridge. And then, so that becomes signalized, but all of the other side streets then become right in, right out. And then also, they changed, I think, the orientation of all of the one-way streets on the north side. So if they were one way, this way, then they went that way. If all of them are changing, does it really prove anything? I'm not sure. That's something that we would have to look at more.
You're not recommending roundabouts?
So roundabouts at
They were looking at
2 main intersections. Yeah, that wasn't part of the study at all.
I asked about a roundabout on the 340 Royal there, and I was curious this time around if it was 1 lane, if it was possible. But when I asked before, they said no. I don't think there was enough clearance or something along those lines.
It would be very tight to get it.
But I thought a roundabout there would be really good.
Again,
So what's the final, do they have a recommendation, or they just give us
yes,
these 2
their
options?
recommendation is alternate 2.
This one here?
And another thing was to have a pedestrian-only signal here at Cloud. Either like we used, we're planning on using on North Shenandoah, or possibly a traffic signal that isn't triggered by traffic, but only by pedestrians pushing the button. So I'm not sure what their intent was there. It could be either one of those.
Excuse me.
Natasha?
Yes, can you pull up figure 6, the crash map? Do you have that on your presentation?
I don't know.
Okay, so I wanted to point out where the fatalities are happening, where the crashes are happening, and they're between the McDonald's intersection all the way up to Carter Street. And right there through that section, we also need to be looking at the lighting like we are for Shenandoah Avenue, because it is also dark throughout that area. We are having fatalities, not just small incidences there or anything like that.
Yeah, I didn't include the traffic, the crash data in this just because it was older. I didn't want to include any of the older things that, probably have changed.
Well, we know that those numbers have increased. So I think it would still be something to show when we have that number of incidences along this, just this little bit of a stretch, because that whole section is only a half mile from one end to the other. But in this little section here, we have the most incidences.
And another recommendation for both alternatives was to look at ways of decreasing the number of commercial entrances, because we have a ton of them. If we can combine any of those, that would eliminate some of the turning traffic. That would be safer for pedestrians because you have a better idea where cars are coming from. And also, you wouldn't have as many rear end incidents or, where people pull out and then, are going slow and then get hit. But because of they focused on the level of service for the intersections, and, level of service is basically for looking at an intersection. And so they didn't look at any improvements that would come from getting rid of any of the commercial or finding alternatives for commercial entrances, combining them or whatever. So that was their suggestion, but there's no data to say this is how it would be better.
Okay.
Here's a rendering of what alternative 2 would look like. This is Martin's right here. So the current signalized entrance or exit would be right in, right out only, and the signal would move to here.
Probably slow down some people flying into Martin's too.
It'd help that Burger King McDonald's situation too. That's
Right, and yeah, this is very awkward for getting out. So again, level of service, not a big change. Some go down, some go up. In general, with this alternative 2, they're better than alternative 1, and so it's really about kind of finding a balance between safety improvements and not disrupting the level of service for the intersection.
Well, you're getting some medians in there too, right? With number 2.
Somewhat.
The medians?
Medians, yes.
Yeah, you're getting some medians in there too.
Yeah, there are some medians, but it's still maintaining 2 lanes in each way.
And part of this, when Bevan was talking about it, was a little bit of the beautification opportunity we have for that road. So you think about lighting, think about some of the trees, think about that median, it enhances the look of that road as well.
And generally, when you enhance the look of the road, when you add vegetated medians and things like that, it does have some traffic calming effect too, and it certainly helps.
VDOT didn't give us any cost figures, did
Yeah.
they? You're looking at probably 6-7 million.
Well, yeah, and part of this, one of the reasons, if I recall, why we didn't do it was because you see the curb, you see the sidewalk and a little bit of vegetation. That has to be taken out of current property lines, right? Like there's not enough space there now. You'd have to encroach a couple feet onto the lines. Is that right?
This was based on existing right-of-way. I think that anything that they showed.
I thought over by Hill Street in that area, I could be wrong, but I thought that, I'm trying to remember why council kind of, backed away from this. And I think a large part of it was because of.
Go back to that last slide, where you have that later. See all that intersection there going into Martin, that's all private land.
Mm-hmm.
So you have
Yeah, this would have
you're
to all
gonna have
be
to,
coordinated.
all that, some of that, I'm not sure if it'd be enough right away in some of those actually turn lanes, but could be, I mean, without checking it all that, so.
Yes, there may be some trees shown that are outside the right of way. I know that the general intent was to stay within the existing right of way.
All right, what's the next step?
But obviously here, that would have to be. So the next step, my suggestion would be, number one, we need updated traffic counts at this intersection because this was done before Leach Run, and there may be an impact from Leach Run taking some of this traffic away. So we should get that updated, and then
What is that really give us?
What's that?
What's that really going to give us? I mean, what are you going to do to that? What are you going to do to that intersection?
Nothing. It would give us change the traffic numbers here. It might change the traffic numbers on South Street or the turning
But until we have funds that can do it, that'd be a waste of money to do a traffic count at this point. That'll be 5 years old before you ever see it. So it would be kind of redundant to get one at this point.
It could be, but, you know, if there's any desire to, you know, proceed, I mean, we have this much of the study done, so if we want to proceed with it, I would suggest forming a committee, you know, possibly the pedestrian safety committee or, you know, some hybrid of it, to look at what do we want, what don't we want, and then go back to VDOT and say, let's reformulate the study with, you know, these things, specific things, and give us the numbers on that.
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is talk about where's the funds coming from.
Well, why
No
don't we-
sense to design something and let it sit on the shelf 5, 6, 7 years. You don't have the funds to do anything with it. That's
we'll
just
get a
a question
cost
of money.
on, the one they want us, the VDOT recommends. Should we
Yeah, I
get
think
a
we should
cost on
get the cost on alternative 2, and we have to look at this and budget as we go along or whatnot, but there are fatalities happening right there in a quarter-mile section where we've had multiple people, including kids, killed in those intersections right there. So that's more important to me than everything else. Is figuring out, pedestrian safety is more important to me than how much it's going to cost.
Well, I agree with safety, but again, if you don't have the money to do the safety factors properly, then you're wasting your money on the side.
Well, no, I
That's why I say
don't,
you
we can
need
just
to-
get a cost on what's already been presented here
Yeah,
and see what it looks
but
like,
again,
and maybe
though,
just
what
start
I'm-
in that little section there.
What I'm saying is, you need to sit down and decide where are we gonna fund it from? And then we'll talk about where we can put that amount of money. To design something at this point without funding, it's just not, it's a waste of time and money.
We
We
don't
don't
even
even
know
know
what
how
we
much
need.
money we gotta spend. So
I
why
can
don't
tell
we
you, you're
find
looking at
out?
probably $6 to $8 million for that project.
I'm all for finding out how much it's gonna
Yes.
cost
Me
to
too.
do this phase. I would like to see that, and then we can decide, you know, where to
Which
go
section
from
to
there.
start with.
Yeah,
That's why I said
but I'm not
we need
interested
money.
in doing any study down the 522
No.
intersection there. That's just a waste of time.
Where's all the studies that were paid for by businesses? Because the previous administration in this town had us do, I don't know how many studies in this area right here. There's gotta be a ton of them. Because every time you go to accomplish any project, well, we gotta have a traffic study. So there's gotta be plenty of them out here somewhere. And that 522 corridor, I know there's extra somewhere.
So we, I'm sure planning has a copy of a lot of those studies. But before we say that we want to go with alternative 2, are we sure that we want all of the aspects of alternative 2? Or do we want to modify?
Isn't that not what VDOT recommends?
Hmm?
Did not
Yeah,
VDOT
but
recommend
this is
that?
a draft
Draft.
study.
Right.
Right.
This is not, you know, this is nothing final, this is just kind of, we went to them asking for a road diet, they said, you know, road diet doesn't really work, you know, take a look at alternative 2, so.
Well, can't we get a cost of alternative 2 and then see what it is, and then if we wanna go through there and critique it, you know, cut this out or whatever, we can do that.
Yes.
I mean, it's,
Can any part of that be done in phases, or like Councilman said, pick the ones that we see that are real issues and fix?
Absolutely, it could be phased, it could be modified anyway, these are just, you know, suggestions for overall improvement. It could be phased every 20 years if you wanted to, but.
Yeah, I think we get the cost and then break it down from there.
Okay,
It makes
Councilman
sense.
T-Wald is correct. You gotta put the appropriations ahead of the cart.
You do, but we don't even know what we're looking at right now, honestly. I mean, we have Gene's estimate, but we don't have actual figures and things of how much it's gonna cost for each different segment.
So what's involved in getting an estimate? Cost estimate?
Time.
Will the state give you those? I don't think they'll give you that unless you're getting ready to do something.
well, how can you get ready to do something if you don't know what you're gonna spend? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but they give,
Let's
second,
do
we
it, all right,
requested.
$20 million.
it. We requested that from them. We didn't request them to give us funding cost. We just said, what would you consider designing something in this regards to South Street?
Yeah, but we're not talking about funding costs, we're talking about just cost of the project. We can discuss all that later. We're just curious what number we're looking at.
Joe, you have
So we
something
can
on
get the
that,
revenue
Joe?
sharing again,
Yeah,
all that
I
good
mean,
stuff.
yeah, we can deal with that later. We
Yeah.
just need to.
What I would suggest is we can contact VDOT and get this study finalized, but we can start working on cost estimates. My recommendation is leverage VDOT. Like right now, you all are approving next week resolutions for supporting the bridge project and all this. This can be incorporated in next year's cycle called Smart Scale Funding, which is 100% funding.
Right.
To me, this project would justify smart scale funding of 100% due to pedestrian safety. So I think if we can position ourselves next year for the smart scale funding, we can get 100% support for this.
But Joe,
Sounds
doesn't
like-
the
sounds
engineering
like-
have to be
sounds like a
completed?
plan.
Yeah, there you go.
But the engineering has to be completed before you can do the smart planning.
Well,
That's what they told us on Happy Creek. That's why
Right.
we're doing the design now.
right, but,
It helps, it doesn't have to be.
right.
Pardon?
It doesn't have to be, it's not a requirement, but it does help to.
Yeah, to get the smart funding, you're gonna have to have a design and all the other things that goes along with
Okay,
it.
what's the next step? What are you gonna do?
We'll work on getting some cost estimates and finalize, get with VDOT and see if we can get this report finalized. We'll get in a position where we can seek funding next year.
How long do you think it would take to get it back to a work session?
Well, I'd say at least give it 4 months, probably. I mean, we've got a lot on our plates right now, but we'll work as fast as we can.
I think if there's a goal for submitting for the funding, I think that's fine. I mean, it's working in that direction.
Yeah, as soon as we can get some progress, we'll bring it forth for an update to council.
Council good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, thanks, Robert.